Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Blancato, and I'm CEO and President of Latimer Endowment Asset Management, Chief Market Strategist for Osaic. So here we are, another weekly market impact. Can you believe we're halfway through the year? My gosh, time flies. I'll show you something fun. Hold on. I had this in my shot earlier. I forgot. Latimer Thalman, kind of cool. Established 1876. We just celebrated our 150th anniversary. So I'll start this week with what I've done since I last talked to you, which is I got to be on the podium at the New York Stock Exchange last week on Thursday. And I got to be there as we were ringing the bell. I didn't swing the hammer. I was hoping to, but my good friend Joe Giovanniello, our longest tenured Ladenburg employee, was out there swinging away. And it was a cool celebratory moment. You know, Ladenburg is this old investment banking credit shop, I guess, for very funding shop, such funding company that was established many, many moons ago by Mr. Thalman and Mr. Ladenburg. And so the story goes, we're the sixth oldest New York Stock Exchange member. And think about the testament to a company to survive 150 years. Unfortunately, I don't know that we've chronicled our history very well. And the reason why, things come and go, things change. I don't know that we had the common thread of ownership throughout that time period that would have written down who we are and what we are. But we are, we go down in the annals of New York City's history as a firm that helped raise capital to help New York be a better place and start businesses at a time in 1876, and when the United States was fumbling through difficult economic periods. Think about the world wars that we saw, the Great Depressions that happened, the numerous recessions, the presidents coming and going, years and years of history. And if I had to sum up what Ladenburg is, it was a firm that helped Main Street raise money. Smaller companies that need to raise money to get started. That was our DNA. And today our DNA is still in that way. It's still a healthcare company that helps companies raise money. Still do it for smaller size companies. And we're very proud of our heritage. We're a small firm, we're not a big firm. And what I oversee, Latimer Endowment Asset Management, was a sister company to Latimer Endowment and Company. But what's cool about it, I get to be part of both, and I get to be involved in some of the investment banking trappings that happen. And it is very interesting to, after all these years, to be, I'm here already 22 years, soon to be 23. So man, make it to September. That's my 23rd anniversary. But all that said, it's cool to be part of a company that's 150 years old. So in honor of our membership of the New York Stock Exchange, of helping build New York City, of raising money for lots of small companies, we thought we'd ring the bell and celebrate it. Very, very fun. Very fun celebratory moment to think about where we are today and where we've come from. I think we're emblematic of American capitalism. We are that company that helped the small business guy get started. So we're very proud of that heritage, very proud of that history, and helped New York become what New York is today. And New York is still a great place. Don't listen to the hype of the radio and the media and the news articles and all this stuff. It's still a great place. Don't worry about governors and mayors. People come and go. There was an interesting piece over the weekend about, is democracy dead? No, it's not dead. It's ridiculous. Does it change from time to time? Sure. Does it tweak from time to time? In fact, if you look at government spending today versus government spending of 4 years ago, it's basically flat. So it means the government's shrinking, not expanding. And if you think about the percentage of GDP that's government related, where it was 3% of not but 100 years ago, and today it's about 19%. The government's for years been taking on more centralized power. So don't get too worked up in this stuff. I think sometimes the headlines scare us more than what's really happening. My point is, New York City, even is still a great place to be, regardless of the politics and what you might be worried about it. Anyway, besides that, Sunday in New York and New Jersey, we have Manhattan Henge, which is cool. The sun sets right between the buildings. So if let's say you're on 42nd Street and you take your camera out and you film, you'll see the sun's really set right down between, right on the main street. It's really cool. And it happens in May, and now it happens in July, which means, everybody, I'm not going to break the bad news to you, but every day we're losing a little bit of light until we get to December 22nd. And being halfway through the year, more than halfway through the year, everybody, you're now closer to Christmas than you were then. Well, I guess than you were to what, New Year's Day. Well, I guess you're 6 months away from Christmas. I'm getting that one. Not even 5.5 months away from Christmas. All right, that's what I meant. You're closer to Christmas than you are in the midpoint of the year. Wow, time flies. And summer's a great time because you get to be outside and you get to do things with your friends and family. I spent the weekend down at the Jersey Shore. It was great. It was warm. I got to spend some really quality time with my friends, Joe and Dana, who I don't get to see enough, and we had a really wonderful weekend. So I hope you did something fun. Uh, when right now it's the time to be outside, time to get out before we can, before it gets cold again. Well, depending on where you live, I guess. But certainly for us in the New York area. We had one heck of a cold winter last year, and it was nice to be on the Jersey Shore in a bathing suit and hanging out in the sunshine. I got my big family reunion trip coming up here in a couple of weeks. We got about 100 of us to go down to the Jersey Shore and spend a week together. That's a lot of fun. And just quick update on my daughters. Marcella is actively studying for the MCAT exam, stressing herself out and shadowing a doctor every day. And the doctor who I know a bit of, I went to see him myself for a checkup recently. Glowing praise for my younger daughter, Marcella, that she's very bright and the kid's going to make a wonderful doctor. It's hard to judge as a parent, but it's nice to hear that. And Luca, well, Luca is at work. Ha ha. Luca, the graduate, is now at work. She is wrapping up. She wrapped up her first week and is now on to her second week. And last night we were out getting ice cream. She goes, "Oh boy, I got to go to work tomorrow." I go, "Yes, you do, young lady." And the best part about this story is on her phone, the credit card on her phone is now her personal credit card. Yes. Finally, Dad gets to stop spending a little bit of money. All right, everybody, I'll give you a quick market update here. Markets are a little bit in turmoil right now, and I'm sure you know why. As of this morning, the Strait of Hormuz is now being guarded, I guess, by the United States. It's not going to close. I believe it when I see it. Iran has proven to be a very formidable opponent. They don't want to give up power. It seems like the religious factions that are in play there, the mullahs, are no longer really in control. If I had to guess from what I've been told, it seems like they're not nearly as in control. And the reason why, the Republican Guard is taking a much harder line against the United States, and they want $2 million a ship, so they can all make a lot of money on it. So I guess the Trump administration has pushed back and started bombing again, especially after Republican Guard bombed a few ships or hit a few ships. So we are at war. We're at the conflict again. Oil spiked to, I was just looking at it, oil's back up to $75 a barrel. So that means if you enjoy those little bit cheaper gasoline prices, they're going to go a little bit higher, assuming it stays here. The oil market's looking through this, not terribly concerned yet. It would seem like this is just another skirmish on the way to some eventual end, but not yet. We're not there yet. And for now, the stock market's doing great. Last week, the stock market was up. Well, it had a 1.26 to 1.26% rate. Oh my gosh, 1.25% increase last week. Forgive me, I can't talk this morning. Let me have some water. What's the matter with me? There we go. 1.25% increase. The Dow lost money last week, down half or 1%. Small caps, an area that we really like, down 0.6% for the week, up 20% on the year still. The S&P 500 is still up 11% on the year. The reason why the S&P did well and the Dow didn't, some of those big tech names did well again. SpaceX had a little bounce off the bottom. It's not in the S&P yet, but it does affect many of the other indexes. It did join the QQQM, the top 100 NASDAQ companies. Not that it's a big deal right now, but eventually it'll be a part of the S&P 500. The Russell 1000, the growth stocks, they were up 2% for the week. Back with that reason why the S&P did well is the other Mag 7 companies did well. Apple near an all-time high. Microsoft had a rebound. International stocks down 1.37 and developed stocks down 1.73. So in other words, for the week, kind of a mixed bag. The winner was the S&P 500. The bond market just can't get out of its own way. We're still flat on the year. I do think the bond market eventually gets it to where it wants to be. But with the Federal Reserve coming out last week and talking about what they think is going to happen here, it seems like we are in this kind of stalemate. Does the Fed eventually have no choice but to hike rates, not cut them? Well, with what's happening in Iran this morning, against Iran, or the last couple of days, it seems to be that that's the case. We're probably going to be stuck with this $75 barrel oil for a while until we get some resolution. And we haven't had that resolution yet. We thought we did in that letter of understanding. I don't know, $75 a barrel is really detrimental to the U.S. economy. When we went $100 a barrel, it didn't really do a big deal. We still had great earnings for the second quarter, or from what we could tell, it's going to be great earnings. But certainly, I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to worry too much about this conflict right now. What the market's signaling is, do we get higher inflation because of this spillover effect from higher oil? And the Fed that came out and released minutes of their meeting last time around, they're getting a bit more murky in what they're saying. And I think it's about the market's suggesting it's not split, but I think it's split between those who want to hike and those who want to stay flat. My best guess is we stay flat here. We're not seeing significant uptick in inflation. We'll get CPI tomorrow, by the way. We do get the latest headline inflation data tomorrow, and we'll see what it says. The inflation data is a little goofy right now because it's going to reflect higher oil prices. Let's see what happens in August. August CPI, I think, will be a bit more relevant than the current CPI, the one that's going to come out tomorrow. And that's only because I think we have this kind of goofy scenario of higher oil, which is now gone, is not going to be reflected in the current CPI number. So I wouldn't worry too much about tomorrow's latest CPI data. I don't think it's going to be terribly, terribly relevant. When you look at what's happening right now, we're kind of in this waiting game. This week, we'll get a lot of information on how companies are doing for the second quarter revenue. Here's a really important part. The one thing that's been forgotten about is that earnings. Let's say you have a company, you make $100 in sales and you earn $15 in net profit. It means your margins are 15%. That's a lot. That's really very impressive. If you have a business that earns 15% margin after all costs and expenses, that's a great business. Now, that's not traditionally what the stock market does. Usually the stock market is 8 to 10. So we're almost double the historical average. And it's not just the AI spending. That's a lot of it. But even if you take those out of it, the rest of the market is still doing well. Look at small caps. Now, there's plenty of small cap companies that aren't doing great because doing well because they're based on an idea and not revenue. But there's plenty that have revenue. And my point is, when you have earnings, bottom line margins that are going to be 15% rather than 8, it supports the stock market. Now, don't get me wrong. The valuations on the S&P 500, the price divided by earnings, that ratio I often talk about, is still about 21. Some markets, some areas 22, some areas 20, which is 2 to 3 times more. The normal averages are 16 to 18, so a bit more expensive than normal. But with margins this high, it's what's holding the market up. What I'm trying to say terribly badly this week is that I don't think we go through this very volatile time in the market here, regardless of a conflict in the Middle East. What I'd be more worried about is, does inflation in April come out high, stay high? So in other words, we're going to get a high number tomorrow. And if it stays high in August, it's reflecting July, and then we get to September and it stays high and they have to hike rates, that's going to be very bad for the market. If we get to a scenario where they're hiking interest rates, that's very bad for the market. If we get to a scenario where they're maintaining or lowering, that's very good for the market. I think the market right now is anticipating maintaining, not lowering, but maintaining. So you put it all together, the market's hanging in there just fine. By the way, if we're up 11% on the year, that's a good number. Market normally supposed to do around 8. So we're already 3% higher and we're just a little bit past the midpoint of the year. If you get another 5-6% on the market, you have a banner year. So for all the concerns out there, I'm not sharing it. I'm not worried about where the market's at right now. This week, we will get big earnings from JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. And as the banks go, tells you a lot about the economy. And I think the banks are going to be just fine. I doubt that there'd be any major issues at all. Let's see. But that is not my expectation really at all right now. Okay, so that's the latest on market data. Some economic data, which I think is important. One of the data points that came out last week was ISM non-manufacturing. Why that one matters a lot is that for manufacturing sector, while I'm very excited, that's been an expansion for a while now, it's almost 6 months. I am more excited about the expansion that we're in for ISM non-manufacturing, otherwise known as services. And that number came in pretty strong. Not as strong as I think the market would have liked it. It came in at 54, which is a very strong number. The problem with that number, it decreased to 54. We were slightly higher than that last time, and the expectations we were going to be higher than 54. But anything above 50 is expansion. And usually we don't see it above 55 or 56. So it's still a very strong number. Now, inside the number, If you look at the prices paid index, that decreased from 71 to 67. So services still stay strong, but the cost in the system actually came down a little bit. That's a really important data point. And it's one of the things that caused services to be higher. And then the other thing was activity among hiring picked up. Hiring did quite well. So we had no issues with hiring at all. So that was a good thing about that number when I look at data points for the week. I mentioned SpaceX, the big deal. It's now in the is in it's in an index now. The Nasdaq 100 is a big index to be in, and that's a big part of some full volatility we'll see in the price of SpaceX. We also saw weekly jobless claims come in at 215,000. Not a big deal. The number of open jobs went to 7.6 million. That is a big deal because there's plenty of open jobs. When the labor market is healthy, the economy tends to stay healthy. And right now, the labor market is healthy. It's not an issue. I would argue that at a minimum, I'm a bit worried about wages. That wages are for the lowest rung of the American workforce, those who make less than 100,000 a year, are now lower than the current rate of inflation. That worries me. You want to see that flip. But wages for above 100 are still higher than the rate of inflation, so that's not an issue. And we know in this K-shaped economy, when the wealthiest people being those over the age of 65, they're still spending. Delta Airlines says they sell a lot more first-class seats for higher margins than they do with seats in the back. In fact, you've seen planes retrofitted to allow for more first-class seats. Marriott Hotels, multiple hotel lines, Carnival Cruise Lines, Royal Caribbean, all saying their bookings are excellent. So when you look at what's happening right now, you don't see stress on the U.S. consumer. The U.S. consumer is still spending just fine. And you saw it in ISM non-manufacturing, as I just mentioned. And the labor market, pretty good. Not a lot to worry about. Do I worry about politics, the geopolitics? Yeah. Do I worry about what's happening in the overall marketplace and what a war and with Iran could do as far as oil prices going higher? Sure, certainly. But I think the president's very aware that he's running out of time in the market to be able to be too aggressive with Iran because the midterms are looming right around the corner. Crazy enough, and we're only a handful of months away from midterm elections. If it's July, it would be November 3rd, right? So we got October, September, August, and what's left of July. So 3.5 months from now, we may see a flip in the House and the Senate. So my point is, I think I'm not terribly worried about what's happening in the war with Iran. And I think ultimately you have a scenario where neither is the market. The market doesn't be overly overly worked up about it either. Okay, so let's keep an eye out for CPI tomorrow. I think that's very important. Not the earnings season's got to come out in full fury here, so I think that's really exciting. But for all the naysayers in the market right now, when margins are this high, we have full employment, inflation, albeit it's a little bit higher than what it was, but it's still not terrible. It's not 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% inflation. It's 3.3 for gosh sakes. Not a big deal. The bottom line is you don't need to worry about the market stop going higher. What you got to worry about is there enough support for the market where it's at based on earnings, and that we definitely have. I think that's the exciting part about that. I don't think you need to be too worried or concerned about that. That is not. So it's not a fear of heights. It's just a fear of quality data. If you get quality data, well, then you're okay. So everyone that wants to be a naysayer of this market, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't think that's the case at all. Not right now. Just a few other fun things, and then we'll wrap it up this week. I'll make it easy on you. I saw the lawsuit between OpenAI and Apple. I think this is kind of a telltale sign. I just think we're going to start seeing many more lawsuits in the AI world because data is everywhere. Data is no longer private. So I just think there's more to come on the data front. And then I thought that lawsuit of who's going to be who's stealing whose data was quite interesting to me. On a fun soccer note, we got to talk a little soccer. We are at the Final Four, and it's the dream scenario. We have the dream scenario for France versus Spain tomorrow, and then England versus Argentina. The four teams I wanted out are the four teams that are in the Final Four. Oh, so distraught about this. I wanted none of these teams in there. None of the four. I wanted them all out. I wanted Norway. I wanted Switzerland. Sweden, excuse me. Switzerland. Egypt was rocking and rolling. Egypt got robbed. What happened with Egypt? Somehow FIFA wants to get Messi into this final, and they're willing to do anything for it. That red card that they gave, but in the Sweden game was a joke. If you like soccer, they gave a guy a red card for a dive. It was his second yellow, which kicked him out of the game, and it handed the game to Argentina. Terrible, Terrible, terrible. But against the Egypt game where they called a foul, it wasn't even a foul. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But when there's billions of dollars at stake, everyone has their conspiracy theory. Mine is I think they're desperate to have Messi win the World Cup again in the United States because it looks good. But I got a sneaky feeling France is going to have something to say about that. France is going to win this thing. And maybe those guys from England who haven't won in a long time, you know what? Let them win one. I think that'd be pretty cool. All righty. So anyway, in the World Cup world, for those of you who care about World Cup or don't care about it, you're getting your World Cup updates from me. It's all good. I did see something fun. Yo, this will be applied to everybody. Cristo Fernandez, who plays the character in Ted Lasso, Danny Rojas, actually started playing soccer again for real this time. I got a kick out of that. That's good stuff that we're seeing that. So just some fun facts. You know me, I love to throw some fun facts at you. One thing about the AI spillover effect that I mentioned last week, I read a new piece about this one, and then in the world of AI spillover, jet turbines. I talked about turbines made by Caterpillar and Cummins that are being bolted on the side of data centers for power, and the latest thing now is data centers desperately looking for jet turbines. Why? Because they can generate a lot of power. There's another way to generate power in data centers. This boom is something incredible it's just something to behold about how much is happening in this boom of AI and what happens next. All right, and finally, when I think about where my rest of the summer goals here, it is to enjoy some sunshine. So I hope you are going to enjoy some too. I mean, it really is that time of year. My tomato garden is going gangbusters. Oh my gosh! Maybe I'll bring a picture. I'll show you guys a picture. It's just crushing it. I got a lot of zucchini coming in. I'll fill my zucchini flowers with flowers with ricotta and lightly fry them. I've got all kinds of salad, romaine, and lettuce. And my eggplant's coming in full steam. String beans will be ready soon. So it is definitely garden time to enjoy some fresh fruits and vegetables. And then time for my shout out of the week. Now, it's a little bit of a controversial shout out. So if you're not going to get mad at me for this one, I understand. I hope you won't. I'm going to give one to a politician. And not because I agree with his policies. I told you, I don't care about the policies. I don't care left and right. It's meaningless to me. What I care about helping you all make money based on what Washington does. But I'll give my shout out to Lindsey Graham. He died suddenly over the weekend at 71 years old. Never married, no kids, dedicated his whole life to being in politics for the United States. And what I saw why I give him my shout out is I saw numerous politicians from both sides of the aisle. Cory Booker. I'm not a big fan of Cory Booker. I'm a New Jersey senator. This is personal. New Jersey senator. Way too much political BS with him. And he hasn't done enough for New Jersey, in my opinion. New Jersey pays in a lot more to the federal government than it gets back. That's why I don't love the guy. And he came out, and he's a very left person, where Graham was a very right person. And he came out and said, I never thought I'd be friends with Lindsey Graham. But I ended up not only respecting him from a political standpoint, but from a friend standpoint too. And when someone dedicates their life to American politics, it means they love the United States. So that's why he's my shout out of the week. The man loved the United States. You may not agree with his relationship with Trump or he was a pro-Israel guy. I think he was a bit of a war hawk. All these things that people get worked up about. I understand that. You have every right. My point is, anyone who wants to dedicate their life to the service of the United States deserves a shout out from Phil Blancato. And that's why I did it. In any event, I hope you had a wonderful week. I hope you're enjoying the sunshine. I realize that we'll keep the light for at least another month until the end of August. Sunset will start both falling below into the 7s instead of the 8s. Enjoy the time. Enjoy the sunshine. Enjoy your friends and family. And one little fun fact, my business partner, Jamie Desmond, who I've talked about from time to time, she celebrated a big birthday. So a special private birthday wish to Jamie. If she knows I did it, she'd probably be mad at me. But hats off to Jamie Desmond celebrating a big milestone birthday. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you all real soon.